Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher. Welcome to the Sweetwater Minute. You know, over 30 years ago, MIDI was invented, and since then, it's become ubiquitous on almost every device that we use in our studios and in our live rigs. Whether it's a keyboard, a guitar amp, a lighting controller, an electronic drum kit, all of those devices sport MIDI ports these days. This year, a technical Grammy is being awarded for the development of MIDI technology to Iketaro Kakahashi, the founder of Roland, and Dave Smith of Dave Smith Industries. I had a chance to sit down with Dave Smith at the Winter NAMM Show 2013. We talked about the development of MIDI as well as the Grammy Award. Here's our interview. Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher from Sweetwater. We are at Winter NAMM 2013, and we are with Dave Smith. Dave, thanks for taking time out from the busy show to talk with us today.
No problem.
Yeah. So congratulations are in order. Big announcement, Grammy, a technical Grammy for MIDI. That has to be pretty exciting.
It's pretty overwhelming, actually. But it's really cool. We get it in 2 weeks. Kakahashi from Roland and myself are getting it. It's pretty awesome.
Right. Can you tell us a little bit of how the whole idea of MIDI came about? What was the genesis of that?
Well, quickly what happened is back then we all started putting microprocessors in our instruments. The Prophet 5 was the very first musical instrument with a microprocessor in it. And then other people started doing polysynths similar to it. And once you have a microprocessor in an instrument, you realize, well, they could fairly easily talk to each other. You know, just like plugging a USB cable between things. It's very easy to communicate digitally. So what happened is we all started doing our own interfaces. So sequential, we had one that was actually 10 times faster than MIDI. Roland had their DCB bus. Yamaha had something. Oberheim had something. It was all different. And then we all, at the same time, kind of realized, well, wait a minute, they don't talk to each other. And we realized it was, if the industry was going to grow, we had to have something common. So that was kind of the first idea. And then I kind of took the ball and ran with it and presented a paper at the AES convention in 1981 in New York with a proposal for what I called the Universal Synthesizer Interface. And it was pretty much a call to arms to try to get different companies to agree on something. And I said, it doesn't have to be this is just something to start with, but let's do something. And then I followed up with a meeting at the NAMM show in January of '82. Invited anybody who made keyboards, and pretty much everybody came. So we had this big meeting, and we tried the same thing. You know, here's something. Can we do something? We got to do something. Who wants to do it? Right. And that was kind of how it all started.
That's amazing that you're able to bring the industry together like that, because it's not an easy thing with competitors to bring them all together and get them to talk about it.
Not at all. And in fact, there were only 5 companies who participated. Most companies, it was either not invented here, or we want something faster and better, or we don't like it, or whatever, or we have our own thing that's better. I mean, sequential, we had our own thing that was better, but we understood the need for compromise. So it was Roland and Sequential and Yamaha and Korg and Kawai that got together and actually did the work. But the industry was much smaller back then also. So trying to do something now, I can't even imagine. It's just...
yeah, it'd be much more difficult. Yeah.
And that's why MIDI is still 1.0.
But you know, it's funny you mention that, because I teach a class for the Sweetwater sales engineers on MIDI, and we get into the nuts and bolts of the messages and all of the stuff that goes on there. And something that always comes out in those classes is the fact that even today, 30 years later, it's still such a viable communication format, and you really don't need to update it because it still supports what people want to do. How forward-thinking were those meetings, or how much were you talking about those kinds of things?
Quite a bit. I mean, we wanted it simple enough that everybody would do it, and cheap enough to implement that everybody would do it. And we definitely succeeded at that. And we also knew that home computers were coming out. They were just barely kind of starting to show up back then. And we knew that, well, this is kind of an obvious thing to control a bunch of synthesizers. And that, in fact, was the birth of the home recording studio before computers were fast enough to do audio. So we predicted some of that. But we certainly didn't predict cell phones, because you know they hadn't been invented, you know, for a long time after that. So you know, we never imagined that billions of people would have MIDI in their pockets, for example.
That's amazing, though. And the other part about it is that we really haven't seen where things have become obsolete, because as you're showing here, you have a Prophet 600 from that era connected to a modern synthesizer, and they still work just perfectly well together.
It still works, and you know, a lot of people complain about, you know, well, MIDI doesn't do this or do that, and most of the time it's actually the design of the musical instrument that's at fault. Because if you design it correctly, it works great, and it does, you know, 99% of what you want to do. Nothing hits 100%, and if you try to hit 100%, then it falls apart. So you got to be happy, 95, 99%, whatever. Then I'm happy.
Right. So in hindsight, 30 years later, what would you have done different?
Figured out a way to make money out of it.
Great answer.
Yeah. We gave it away from the beginning. So
Right, but that's great though, because it allowed it to become a universal standard
Exactly.
that's supported in so many different areas.
that was the whole idea. We wanted it to be 100%, and it's one of the only interfaces anywhere that's 100% implemented, and has been for 30 years.
Right. Very nice. Well, congratulations. It's a wonderful thing to see you get the technical Grammy on that. Well deserved.
Thank you.
And thanks for taking the time today.
No problem. Thank you.
I hope you've enjoyed this interview with Dave Smith of Dave Smith Industries on the founding of MIDI and his Grammy Award. I'm Mitch Gallagher. Thanks for joining me for the Sweetwater Minute.